All right, guys, let's try this again. We're live once again. I tried the first time and it kept saying I had a poor connection. I'm showing I've got a good connection, so let's try it one more time. So if you guys follow the channel, then you probably know that I've been out of town for a couple of weeks covering the Great Race. That's a huge undertaking for me, and it leaves me with very little time to produce a video. So what I'm going to do is show you a live look at our collection of old drag cars. Apologize for that first time not working out. I don't know what the deal was with the connection, but it looks like we're working this time. So leave me a comment below if you can hear me and if you can see this clearly. That's pretty important, obviously, otherwise we're all wasting our time here. But this is my dad's shop. He has made a living out of this shop for a little over 30 years now. It's not anything huge, not anything elaborate, but he's made a good living out of it. He has enjoyed himself and a lot of his buddies, and I had the pleasure of growing up with this in my backyard, and watching my dad and his friends build drag cars and hot rods and all sorts of cool stuff. So we're going to do a walkthrough on some of the stuff that's here. If you're a follower of the channel, you've probably seen some of these things in the background. Maybe you've not seen all of my different videos on these different cars. So we're going to walk through, and we're going to start actually out here with a car that doesn't belong to us. This 55 Chevrolet station wagon. This belongs to Tommy Dillard. He's one of our good friends. He and his brother Terry Dillard. Terry's actually my next door neighbor. Tommy and Terry drag raced in the 60s and 70s. They actually had a 57 Chevrolet station wagon that they ran in junior stock. And this is kind of, I guess you could call it a tribute to those old days. Definitely a neat old car. They're doing some body work on it. They've got a real good sounding engine in it. Should be a pretty fun thing to cruise around in. There's the old Chevelle. This has been my daily driver since I've torn apart the 77 Nova. And since I've been out of town 2 weeks, it's gotten dirty. I hadn't had a chance to clean it, but still runs and drives good, and the air works. So that's truly all that matters. This Cobra, this doesn't belong to us. This is something that my dad has fooled with a little bit. It was in, I don't remember how many pieces this body was in, but it was tore all to pieces, and they've patched it back together. And they actually put this on an S10 frame, believe it or not, a shortened S10 frame. So it's a little rough. I mean, there's no hiding it. It's a rough car, but it's basically built out of nothing. I mean, they started with not much. So pretty neat. Should be fast. I mean, even with a pretty stock small block Chevy in it, it should be pretty lightweight, pretty fast little car. So let's get into the drag cars. As you can see, there's some junk here. That's leftovers from this little project my dad's been working on. But this Kellison, you guys may have seen a video on this. If you haven't seen the video on this, I encourage you to go back through my videos and find it. We found this thing in Louisville, Kentucky. A couple of good friends led me on to it, and we were actually able to buy it and drag this thing home. And I completely did a documentary on this car going back to day one. This thing started life in 1967. Had a blown and injected 392 Hemi. It ran in double B altered for most of its career. And it was based out of Lexington, Kentucky during that time. Unfortunately, the chassis was destroyed in a wheel stand. The rest of the car was parted out, and the body ended up in a kind of a scrapyard back behind a body shop in Louisville, Kentucky. So this is a cool one. It's still got a little bit of lettering on there that you can see. It said Performance Center. It's almost all faded off of there. It was black at one time. But one of our neatest pieces. Even though it's barely hanging in there. It's rough. You can see that the top is just about caved in. There's not a whole lot there holding it together. But hopefully one of these days we'll get it kind of scotched up and make something out of it. Thank you, Marvin. Everything's going okay with us. I've had a rough week, to be honest with you. I covered the great race. That was 2 weeks on the road, which is hard enough as it is. But then traveling back home, I was supposed to get home Monday at about 10 o'clock in the evening, and our flights got canceled. We got stuck in Charlotte, North Carolina, had to get a hotel. Flight didn't leave out until afternoon the next day, so that was tough. Then my mom actually had to go to the hospital the next day, and then Carly tested positive for COVID yesterday. So rough week. Hadn't had a lot of time to devote to videos, so that's why I'm coming to you live from my dad's shop. We're going to talk about all these dragsters, all this stuff hanging around. Little Henry J over there. That's going to be a fun project. Definitely keep on watching, because I'm going to show you a little bit about that car, tell you a little bit about it. And then if you haven't already subscribed, I would suggest that you do that, because that Henry J is going to be my next Will It Run project. We're going to drag that thing out of its hole and try to get running again. All right, so this dragster that we're looking at here, I don't have history on it yet. I hope that I will someday. But I bought this from Tony McConnell. Again, if you haven't seen the video on Tony McConnell's place, you got to check that out. He's got a cool collection of drag cars, and while I was up there doing that video, I just kind of fell in love with this thing, but I haven't been able to document it yet. Haven't figured out the history yet, but I do know it's from the late 50s, based on the wheelbase, but it does look like some things have been changed, like the torsion bar front suspension. That's probably not correct for the era, but anyways, this thing, I'm hoping to be able to track something down on it. We'll see. If not, it's still a good conversation piece. This little go-kart is a pretty neat piece. This is something that you could have bought out of like a Sears catalog, or possibly like a Popular Mechanics magazine back in the day. And there's not much left of it. I mean, it's pretty rusty and pretty rough, but I'm assuming it was in the woods for years before my dad found it. But it's a pretty cool piece. Missing a wheel, but still cool. The next dragster here, this one's pretty special. This one's fully documented. I did a video on it at least a year ago. I don't remember exactly. But this thing is extra special because it came from California. We still don't know exactly why it came from California. But I was able to document it based on these very peculiar frame rails. These frame rails are oval shaped. They're actually like a teardrop shape. They're wider here than they are on the bottom. And those were used on wing struts in, I guess, World War II era. But these are actually chromoly material, which was state-of-the-art for the 1950s when this was built. It was built by Joe Ito in California, and it was raced by Tets Ishimaru. So this car originally had a 6-cylinder in it, and then it had a 430 cubic inch Lincoln engine in it. Originally ran with multiple carburetors, then with a Potvin style supercharger, then with a conventional style supercharger with Hilburn injection. This thing progressed very quickly from about 1958 through 1960. And once again, I don't know how in the world it ended up in Tennessee, but we're lucky to own it. This is one of those someday projects. It'd be cool to strip this thing down and paint it, find a 430 to stick in it. But we got a lot of other projects. So this longest dragster, this is one, we bought this one several years ago. We actually bought it out of a junkyard. Elmer Earl's junkyard over towards Cleveland, Tennessee. And this thing was actually cut in two right here where you can see these big welds. That's actually where we just stuck it back together. But this thing was cut in two, and it was sitting in between two cars in an old junkyard. And right where it was cut, you can actually see that it's different size tubing. This is pretty big. This is much smaller, which kind of leads me to believe that this car was wrecked and they just cut it off and added this new, longer, smaller tubing. I did a video on this. I don't have any history on it really, but I do know, as you can see right here, that is threading, like as in this is water pipe that this is made out of. So if you look back through my videos, you'll see a video that says water pipe dragster. That's what this is. But for this thing to be home built and built out of water pipe, it's got a really nice looking cage. I mean, it's not nice as far as the welds that are bad, but as far as the design, it's really cool looking. It's got this double backbone here that's nice. It's not square at all. I mean, this thing is, it's not good, but it's a pretty cool car. We've got just a 265 Chevrolet engine sitting on it that actually came out of that 55 Chevrolet station wagon that's sitting over there. Just a stock motor. It's just laying there. It's not actually even bolted in. And then basically every swap meet that we go to, we buy something. And we bought this little scoop that's really for like a 70s or 80s car, but we stuck it on there because that's fun. So glad all you guys are tuning in tonight. I know this is a little different than my normal video. Just to catch everybody up, I was out of town for 2 weeks, and then came home, and it's just been a busy week. So we're doing a live video from my dad's shop. Figured that'd be a fun way to spend a Friday night. All right, we got to talk about the 57 Chevrolet Convertible. This car is a fiberglass body, and the reason why it's pink is that these things were built for display purposes in front of a 50s style restaurant in I guess in the 80s and early 90s, because my dad was able to buy a few of these cars. My dad and his friends were able to buy a few of these bodies, and they built a few cars out of them. The other ones that they built actually didn't have doors. They were just slick down the side, no door whatsoever. And they actually cut doors into one of them and put factory 55, 6, 7 door jambs in it and door hinges, and they work just like they're supposed to. They never got to that point with this one. It's just sat here for a long time. It's on I think it's an El Camino frame, like from the 70s. This one needs some attention for sure. Not sure exactly what the plan is going to be for this. It's sat for lots and lots of years, but it could be cool. I think it'd be cool to make a drag car out of it. Or the other one that they built is a pro street car, so it's got a big 671 blower and carburetors and scoop and all that stuff sticking out of the hood, and 21.5-inch wide Mickey Thompsons under the back of it. It hurts a lot of people's feelings because they think that it's a real 57 convertible that somebody has cut up, but just a fiberglass body, display only. But the cool thing about these cars is that they used real stainless chrome, the bumpers aren't on it, but they used real bumpers, a real windshield, real everything. So whoever had this 50s restaurant chain, they spent crazy amounts of money to put these cars together, because I mean, they're just, I can't imagine that being a profitable venture. All right, we got to talk about this Henry J. So to give you some background, I am a Henry J fan. That's my favorite car of all time. My dad had a Henry J drag car in the 70s and 80s, and it's actually still here in my hometown and tucked away in a garage. So it's a neat car. But this is not that car. This is my dad's buddy's car from the 70s This car belonged to Ronnie DeVault, and he was known for building high winding small block Chevrolet engines. And he actually built this thing, I guess it was in the mid to late 70s. It's actually got a straight axle under the front of it, but it sits low, not like a conventional gasser that sits up high, but the lettering and stuff is still visible. I believe my uncle did some of the lettering on this. My dad always painted cars, and then my uncle did the hand lettering. I'm not sure if he did this or not, but it's got a cool eagle lettered on the side of it there, or hand painted on the side of it. And you can see a little bit here, it says DeVault Automotive Service. It's kind of hard to read. But here's the most peculiar part of this car, is that the engine is right there. And you sit in the original Henry J back seat to drive it. So the hood doesn't function, hood doesn't work, it's like bolted down. Let's see if I can get the door open here. So yeah, it's just right there, easy to change the plugs if you want to change the plugs on it. You know, you can tune the carburetor while you're driving down the road, adjust the timing, whatever you want to do. You just reach up there and do it. And the craziest thing about this car is that it was driven on the street like this, but it had a 4-speed and not this. I think this is a 350 turbo that's in there now. It had a 4-speed manual transmission with an aluminum bell housing. And yeah, that's just a bad idea with a small block that would rev 10 grand. And this car's famous story was that it had a clutch explosion, or possibly a flywheel explosion, at Buffalo Valley drag strip over in Middle Tennessee. And you know, those stories are always just stories until you see proof. You know, those stories kind of get exaggerated over time. You know, you hear it and you know, maybe somebody might be elaborating a little bit or exaggerating. But when we got this car, the first thing that I wanted to look at was up under here, right there. See that? That is where a big chunk of the flywheel blew out of the roof of the car. And then they hammered it back down, and you can see that they bondoed right over the top of that. So that's my favorite part of this car, is that story turned into reality when you can see the proof like that. You can also see this big dent right here. That's from a piece of the flywheel. When all that happened, it actually broke the back of the intake, I think it broke the block, sheared the magneto in two. I mean, it made a mess of this car, made a mess of the track too. But the engine that's in there, that's a 327 that used to be in my Corvette years ago. It's pretty rowdy, and I hope to get it running soon. In fact, I want this to be my next Will It Run project. This thing's been off the track since about 1978, and I want to get it running and driving again, even though it's rough and rusty and just, you know, scary. It's a little scary, but I think we can get it running again. All right, so moving on. This is not a drag car. This is my dad's Plymouth Valiant. And I did a video on this thing too, because he bought it, and it just kind of encourages me and a lot of other people to not be so picky about old cars. You know, there was a long time that if it wasn't a 2-door hardtop, that people didn't care about it. And now 4-doors, station wagons, old trucks, they're getting to be a lot more popular because they're available, and they're still pretty affordable. This one's slant 6 powered, push button automatic. It's a neat little car, and it's definitely worth fixing. So my dad's been working on it a little bit, doing a little bit of body work to fix some of the not so great areas. So that's the outside. We're gonna walk inside and check out some of the stuff that's in there. I apologize that I haven't been able to keep up with all the comments. to let everybody know. The reason why I'm doing this is that I've been out of town for a couple of weeks. I got home later than I expected. Then my mom had to go to the emergency room. My daughter was tested positive for COVID. It's been a rough week. So I thought this would be a nice, easy way to give you guys some entertainment without me having to sit and edit, a big long video or something. So here's another cool thing. This is a quarter midget race car. This is something my dad found at an estate sale and bought this thing, and we stuck it back together using the parts that were in the crate that came with it, and we actually got it to run again. It's a little two-stroke, just a weird little engine combination because most of these things ran Continental four-stroke engines. So kind of weird, but definitely a cool piece. I mean, it is just like, I don't know, there's just not a better looking body to me than that. That is just the coolest little car. Tons of cool pieces like that aluminum steering wheel with a little wrap, just like an old race car would be. And we got this thing running. It's actually an Lafayette. Lafayette is what it's called. And I've researched it, and it's a very early Lafayette. I've got a full video on the research that I did on it, as well as getting it running again. So if you haven't seen that, definitely look back through my videos and you'll find it. Here's a little small block Chevy. So years ago, many years ago, this blower, this B&M blower, was on my Corvette. And if you guys are longtime followers, you'll remember that my screen name or my username on here was Blown64Vet for a long time until I changed everything over to Hot Rod Hoarder. But that's because I had this blower. My dad put that blower on that car back in the 80s. Actually, the guy he bought it from put the blower on it, to be 100% correct. But this thing put in a lot of work over the years. It's pretty much wore out now, but it's pretty neat. The engine itself is not anything special. My dad just painted it up. He wanted something cool to look at. So he's got these really nice, basically NOS Moroso valve covers on there. Chevrolet orange is looking just right. And then this has got to be my favorite car out of the whole collection of our junk. This is Loco. This is a Kellison funny car. It didn't technically ever run as a funny car. It spent most of its career as an altered. It ran in B altered for most of its life, at least its early life. And then the coolest thing about it is that there are pictures of my old Corvette right when my dad finished it. He pulled it out in the road and took some pictures of it, and this car was in the background. So it belonged to my dad's really good friend, Dennis George. We call him Denny. Denny had this car for quite a while back then. That was in the 80s when that picture was taken. And this car has huge history dating back to 1967. It's a IHRA and AHRA world record holder. This thing has been in magazines. I did an article on this car in Hot Rod magazine. That's been almost 10 years ago, right when we bought it. And guys, when I say junk, I don't mean junk. I mean, that's just what we call our stuff. I'm not trying to be ugly about it. This stuff is what we love. We absolutely love these cars. And this ranks pretty highly on our list of favorites. I mean, my dad, he loved this car. Even back in the day, he loved the way this thing looked. And for us to be able to get it back in, here to our hometown is pretty amazing. And it was pretty much untouched. The Magnesium Wheels, those things are just like perfect. I mean, they look grungy, but that's just what Magnesium does. They turn gray like that. So we bought it without an engine. We got a smoking killer crazy deal on this big block. And I'm talking about insane deal. The engine was messed up. but it was an easy fix. It came with this Hilburn fuel injection setup, which has all the pump and everything to make this thing run. It's the closest thing we've got to a functional drag car. This thing is just, it's insane how cool it is. I mean, I can't get enough of this car, and I'm hoping, really hoping, that after we get the Henry J running, that'll kind of give us the motivation to go ahead and get this thing buttoned up and get it to where we can maybe not make any passes in it. It's probably not ready for that, but at least crank it up, maybe make a little blast down the road over here. We've been known to make a few little trips around the block and stuff that didn't belong on the road. So this car, I'm going to do a huge video on this. This car has so much history. I've got dozens and dozens and dozens of pictures of this car throughout its life, throughout its different owners. I've got video clips of it. I've got so much stuff on this car that it's going to be a long video. It's going to be, I've kind of put off doing a video on this thing because I just keep finding new information on it, and I keep digging to find more. And one of these days, I'll put a video together on it, and then one of these days, I'll put a video together of us getting this thing running, because that's going to be really special. Denny George is one of my dad's best friends for, I guess, going on about 40, maybe more than 40 years now. And I would love nothing more than for Denny to be over here while we crank this thing up and maybe even take a little test lap in it. So we'll save the rest of the details on this old car for when I do the full video on it. It's just, trust me, like, it's good. It's really good. This is a pretty neat little engine. This is a 409 Chevrolet engine, and it's a little nicer than the rest of this stuff in here, if you haven't noticed. That's a brand new engine that we built a few years ago. I built it for Super Chevy magazine. We bought this thing kind of as a gamble. Anytime you buy an old engine, it's a gamble. But this one paid off pretty well. This was a over-the-counter block. So this engine was never in a factory-produced car. There's no numbers up here, no suffix codes, nothing at all. And from what we can gather, it was an over-the-counter block. And the only thing that this engine has ever been in is a 55 Chevrolet B-gas car that ran here locally. Pretty special that we were able to get our hands on it. And again, I'm going to point you back to some older videos. I did a video on us digging up, or attempting to dig up, a 55 Chevrolet drag car. And that was the car that this engine was in. That car was buried under the ground, like for real. And we went and tried to dig it up. So I would suggest you go check that video out. If you haven't, it's one of my older videos. It's not, I'm not real proud of the production value on it, but it's definitely a special story to us. So you got to check that out. This engine runs really good. It's got Edelbrock aluminum heads on it, Edelbrock intake, 2 4s, comp cams, hydraulic roller. It's 11-to-1 compression, Pertronix electronic ignition. It's ready to rock, and we're just waiting on the day to find the right 55 Chevrolet to put it in, because that's what it needs to be in. It's never been in anything else as far as we know. So under the cover, 66 Chevy 2, and this is a car that I've had a few videos on the channel, and I'm going to give you just a little sneak peek of it. It's looking a little better than in previous times that I've shown it. My dad painted this thing. It's been a few months now. It's been sitting over here on this side of the garage. We're kind of waiting on some parts to show up. You know how it is. Parts are not available right now, so I'm waiting on some trim to show up and things like that, and we'll be able to start sticking this thing back together. But that paint really, it looks nice. I'm super excited to put this car back together. And if you're not familiar with it, this car is a factory 6-cylinder automatic car, and we're leaving the 6-cylinder. put vintage air on it, and changed it over to disc brakes and tubular control arms, but we're leaving that little 6-cylinder because it just runs so good. And this is my father-in-law's car, by the way. One of several cars that he owns. But we'll do more on this car. We'll do more on it later as we're putting it together. Here's another old drag car. I did a video on this. This is Jim Smith's Dragster. This is an extremely special car to us. This is a car that will never leave our possession because it just means that much to us. This car we dug out of the woods. It had a tree growing up through the middle of it, right about here. Tree growing up through there. And we drug this thing out of the woods with Jim's permission, of course. And we bought it from Jim. And we stuck this thing back together using parts that he had stashed away in various places on his property. And these 6 Stromberg carburetors, the Y-end intake, the 354 Hemi, the headers, the custom-made clutch can that he built, the drive shaft, everything on this car, he built it. I mean, I guess with the exception of he didn't technically build the carburetors and the intake, but the rest of it, he built this thing from scratch. And it ran on nitromethane in the early 60s. And we're thrilled to own this car. And once again, if the timing ever works out, we'd love to put together an engine for this. This engine is pretty much trash. Jim said that it expired on the drag strip one night. There's not much left to fix, but it still looks cool. So we want to put a 392 in it, or, I mean, if we found a 354, we would. But he said his plan, he bought a 392. He was going to put it in this car. The 392 still exists at his property, even though he's no longer with us. The 392 is, and it would be wonderful to build that 392 and put it on this car and make it a cackle car, just a display car. This car can never be functional again as far as an actual drag car, but it would make one very cool cackle car because of its history and because of the fact that it's got a big old Hemi engine that just kind of takes over your attention, grabs your attention there. So let's keep moving. This wall of parts is fun. So we go to swap meets several times a year. We go to swap meets any time we get the chance, and we buy stuff. That's why we call ourselves a hot rod hoarder. My dad and myself, we just can't resist this kind of stuff. So vintage valve covers, scoops, tunnel rams, anything that's a vintage speed part, old carburetors, all that kind of stuff. That's what we like. We dig it up, we find it, we most of the time hang on to it. We don't do a very good job of selling this stuff, even though some of it's worth money. I think this is a good example. No, that's not the one. Well, I was going to say there was a good example here of a high-dollar piece that's just kind of hiding. Is that it right there? Yeah, that's it. So right there, I don't know if you can see that, but that's got a GM part number on it and the letters DZ. That's a good carburetor right there. That's money. And we just happened to find it. It was actually in the trunk of a 67 Camaro that we had bought and traded around on. And it's one of those things that we just had to hang on to that one. That was definitely not something that we were willing to turn loose of. A factory Z28 carburetor, you don't find that very much. So my dad's a motorcycle guy. I am a little bit. I'm not real crazy about them. I don't ride them very much, but I like looking at them. So this is my dad's 72 Harley. This is a FLH. My dad has had this for 40 plus years. This belonged to, this was his brother-in-law's motorcycle. And when he passed away, my aunt gave this to my dad. So it'll be in the family forever. It'll get passed down through the generations. This is a Harley. Oh my goodness. It's okay. Got it. This is a Harley Super 10, I think is what it's called. Some people call them a Harley Hummer. They're just kind of a small little one-cylinder bike. My dad loves these things. He had one when he was a kid, so he loves that. And then the little Simplex over there, we'll take a different look at it when we get around to the other side. He likes those too. The little Hondas, that's a Honda 50. And then that's a Honda Dream. I guess that's a 305 Dream. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot about motorcycles. My dad is the motorcycle guy. So we got tires and wheels everywhere. Can't really look at that because it's, let's see, maybe we can. Yeah, there you go. Old school wheel and some slicks. Every time I come over here, there's more stuff. So we'll get to these magnesium wheels in a minute. We got some of them. This is the little Simplex. My dad had one of these when he was little, and so of course he wants one now. And this one's pretty cool. It's a little rough, but I'm pretty sure he's actually ridden this thing down the road. He's got all of his belts and jack shaft and all that kind of stuff hooked up. So here's a pretty cool piece. This is the front of a funny car body. We got this as a gift from Bob Gibson. And if you remember, if you're a follower of this channel, Bob Gibson, he is a funny car guy. And he bought a funny car chassis from us that was really rough, but it was his first funny car that he had ever bought. And it had a bunch of cool history. And he helped me find all of that history and document that car, and I put together a video on it. It's a 67 Camaro funny car. If you look back through my videos, it's a really cool piece. And the reason we bought that Camaro funny car chassis was because of these Halbrand spindle mount wheels. They were in incredibly good condition. The M&H tires are perfect. We just could not pass up the deal. So we ended up passing on the car to Bob Gibson. We kept the wheels because we just thought that was cool. But we did give Bob the option to buy those wheels. He chose not to, and that's okay. Okay, this is random and weird. This is a Cutaway engine that my dad bought at a swap meet. My dad just loves swap meets. I do too. But he wanted to buy this thing because it is cool. It's legitimately cool. You got your cylinder and the piston, camshaft. I mean, you got everything right there, all visible. Super cool. I think he gave $100 for this thing. I don't know. It was cheap. It was real cheap. The stand alone was worth $100. I mean, it's super sturdy and it's got wheels on it. But pretty neat setup. Somebody did a ton of work. This thing was probably like a $100,000 factory cutaway or something that somebody got their hands on. So back here in the back, I hate that we've got this thing covered up with junk. But this was our first front engine dragster that we ever bought. And I would hate to count up how many hours of research I've done on this car. It's a lot because this car is a Lindwood chassis. It was built in Pennsylvania. It raced in the Northeast. But this is one of those things I don't have a firm answer on yet. So I haven't put a video together on it. We bought it. It was actually sitting on the side of the road with a for sale sign on the front end of it. And we just pulled in. We were on our way to Pigeon Forge to a car show, and this thing was sitting on the side of the road in Maryville, Tennessee. And we just couldn't pass it up. We bought it right there, brought it home. We changed some tires and wheels out. These are some ET 15 by 8.5s, I think. M&H vintage slicks, 1050 15s. Those wheels and tires, by the way, they came off of a Kellison funny car, not our Kellison funny car, but another Kellison funny car. And we were able to buy them again they were at a swap meet. So we bought those and the front wheels. The front wheels were Magnesium Americans, and they're now on the front of Todd Oden's 58 Chevy gasser that runs with the Southeast Gassers Association. So that was cool. I mean, that's one of the rare times that we sold something. We sold those wheels to Todd, and we felt like they went to a good home. So these are some cool ones. This is 16 by 10 American Racing torque thrust wheels. These are magnesium. These would have went more than likely based on the extra back spacing. You can see it's got these big ribs, and that was only found on wheels with extra back spacing. So these would not have been on a top fuel dragster. They more than likely were on an AFX, an early AFX car, or possibly like a match race, match bash type of car, just based on the offset, the back spacing. So anyways, this is our first pair of magnesium wheels we ever bought. We bought them at a swap meet in Crossville, Tennessee, and I'll tell you that we got a smoking deal on them. These tires, the tires alone, I mean, they're worth a bunch of money because they're so good. They're M&H Racemaster 760-15s. We're talking 50s, 1950s. So these wheels are actually before American Racing was called American Racing. They're Romeo Palomides built those wheels. They're magnesium, 15 by 8.5s. Just epic find. We gave $200 for the pair. Guy just wanted to get rid of them, so can't pass up a deal like that. Here's a cool little, this is just a onesie that we bought at a swap meet. That's for a Midget. They are, I think they're 12 inches in diameter. It's a Halbrand wheel with an M&H tire on it. We love Chevrolet dog dish caps. We buy them every time we see them, even if they're rough like those. Usually when they're rough, they're cheap, so we like that. This engine with the tunnel ram's a pretty neat piece. Complete engine. It's got some good pieces in it. It's I think it's got a Crowler crankshaft in it, big compression, big cam. I mean, somebody was building a real good engine, and we just happened to find them on a day that they were ready to get rid of it. It had been sitting a long time. So this Go-Kart, this is a twin engine. This was built in the 60s. It's a twin Mccullough two-stroke engine Go-Kart. And these things were just all over the place in the 60s. You could buy them out of Hot Rod Magazine or Popular Mechanics. A bunch of different companies were building them. And this is one of them. We'd love to get it running again. You can see up here it's still got a decal. It says RSK, the RS Kart. Pretty neat piece. It's got slicks all the way around. This has been in our family for lots of years, but hasn't run in lots of years. So got some dragster wheels. Hey Derek, thank you for the prayers. Everything's been okay so far. My daughter tested positive for COVID yesterday, but she seems to be feeling okay. So we're very thankful for that. We all had COVID back in January, so we're hoping that round 2 is a little nicer to us. So piles and piles and piles of things. Some old Chevrolet Deluxe hubcaps, all sorts of different hubcaps. Pedal cars, bicycles. This is the bicycle that I rode when I was little bitty. Tons of cool pedal cars, car show trophies, plaques, and things like that. More bicycles. My dad used to have about 70 vintage bicycles, and he sold out. That's probably been 20 years ago or more. He sold out, and this is really about all that's left over. And then, of course, he buys them. If he sees a good deal on one at a swap meet or a yard sale, he'll buy it. And pedal cars are the same way. My dad loves pedal cars, so he's got quite a few. even rusty ones like this. There's not much left of that one, but yes, Richard, we need a bigger shop, no doubt. My shop at home is packed as well. So yeah, we need a bigger shop. Back in here, kind of behind that wall, there's parts stuffed in there. You can see 2 4-speeds. One of those is the original 4-speed out of my Corvette that my dad tore up while giving my buddy Josh a ride in it. That's been close to 20 years ago. And now the car has a 5-speed in it now. So the original transmission sitting up there, that's actually the original engine out of my Corvette. That is numbers matching, 365 horse, solid lift cam, double hump heads, 11.5 to 1 compression, the whole 9 yards. That's the original numbers matching engine. It probably won't ever go back into the car, but it's cool to have it. I mean, that my old car is just a hot rod. I don't care about the numbers matching aspect of it, but it is neat to have that piece of history just sitting here. And if someday we want to use it, we can. The engine is brand new, by the way. It was built 30 plus years ago. It's all brand new inside, but it probably needs to be gone back through by now. There's a couple more 4-speeds, and then a tower of vintage wheels that we've bought over the years. It's a problem. It's an addiction. Got some little spindle mount dragster wheels, Centerline, I think, or maybe Krager's. Some little front runners, weld wheels, rock'em sock'em robots. If you just need to play a game of it real quick while you're in the shop, you can. I did want to show you these wheels. So this is an example of buying something that you really don't need. These are Magnesium Wheels. We love old wheels. But these are for an Indy car. We bought them at a swap meet. I don't remember what we gave for them, but they were cheap. They are marked and dated right here. I don't remember what the 1981. And they were part of the Longhorn Racing Team, which had some pretty famous drivers in the 80s, if you remember. These could have been on a famous car. I don't know for sure, but look at how wide these things are. They're massive. They're for the rear of an Indy car. So we bought them, had no use for them, but they're magnesium. We just kind of had to have them. We'll put that back on there for safekeeping. Shifters. We love old shifters. That one, I believe, is an inline shifter, maybe a Mr. Gasket. Inline shifter. Some more dragster wheels. All sorts of cool stuff. Just too much stuff, if we're being honest. But that's why my channel is called Hot Rod Hoarder, is because that's what we are. We hoard these parts up. And, you know, we got tons of engine parts and things, but my dad just bought this engine. I believe it's a 327, double hump heads, everything's there for it. We just can't get enough of it. We just keep on and keep on and keep on and keep on. Just like the pedal cars, we got plenty of those things, but anytime my dad finds one, he's just got to own it. So, the Loco Car, we're going to look at it again because it's just so cool. I don't think anybody would disagree with me there. I'm going to go back over just a brief history on this thing. 1967 through 1972, this car ran in B altered. Actually, it started in the modified sports car class and then ran in B altered. And then it sat for a little while, and my dad's buddy, Dennis George, we call him Denny, bought this car and rebuilt it, and he bracket raced it. He had several different engines and transmissions in it through the years. He bracket raced it at Crossville Drag Strip, Buffalo Valley, several places here in Tennessee. And then this car kind of went missing. He sold it in the late 80s, and we didn't know what happened to it, and we ended up finding it with the power of the internet. We found it and bought it, brought it back home to where it needs to be. So we love this car, and we're ready for someday to get the thing running again. Hey, there's some more tires and wheels. Just, we got them everywhere. Slicks, old slotted mags, just a little bit of everything in here. So I'm going to step back outside here. And I apologize that I haven't kept up with the comments. I've been just trying to get around and not trip over stuff, and I honestly just haven't been paying attention to the comments all that well. I apologize for that. But now that I'm back out here, I'm gonna hang out for about 10 minutes. The sun's going down. It's finally starting to cool off a little bit. And if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna sit here, and I am gonna pay attention to the comments, and we can do a little Q&A if you'd like. So if you got any questions, any thing that you want to know, just go ahead and let me know there in the comments. And I'll stick around probably another 10 minutes, and we'll call it a night. Hopefully next week things will be a little smoother, and I can actually put together a video for you guys. But I thought that you might enjoy this live look around at my dad's shop. Not, I've never done a video of this nature, so, this is a little different for me, but I hope you guys have enjoyed it. What do we have that's cool and running? Well, nothing over here runs, aside from my Chevelle over there. That thing runs like a top. Nothing over here runs. At my house, that's where everything that runs lives. I've got an old Corvette. I've got this Chevelle. I've got an old Nova. Got quite a few things. Let's see, Richard Perkins. What's the plan for the Cool Henry J as far as building? What we plan to do is just get it running again. We want to keep the paint as it is, the lettering right there. That's history right here in Dayton, Tennessee. This car was from here. It was my dad's buddy's car. They run around together. They street raced a little bit together with it. They raced at local tracks like Crossville Drag Strip. So definitely something we're going to try to get running again. But as far as the build, we're just going to try to get some brakes up on it, get the engine running, get it to where we can drive around the block. All right, let's see here. There we go. I was having a hard time seeing the comments. Here we go. What are you guys planning on drag racing? If we could ever get the old funny car, the Kellison Loco Car, if we could get that thing running, we could probably take it to a nostalgia race and just make a pass with it. I don't know how extensive we'll be with the build on it. The engine is definitely stout. It's started as a 396 small block. We actually like that it's a smaller cubic inch engine. Did I say small block? I meant big block. 396 big block in the Loco Car. So that's probably the car, if we were ever to put one together to actually try to make a pass in, that's the one. But I love this view right here, by the way. Like, just look at all that stuff. That's years and years and years of collecting. And yeah, we have a sickness. I see Hot Rod commenting on here. Been a long time, man. Where you been? I need to come see you sometime. Let's see. Looking back through the comments here, just making sure I didn't miss anything. I do appreciate all the guys with the thoughts and prayers for our family. It's just been a rough week. You know how it is. If you got kids, they get sick. It's definitely one of those things. They're around people at school and at camp and at church and just everywhere. So they get the germs. So I appreciate all you guys watching. This has been a lot of fun for me to just walk through here, show you guys some of this history that we got laying around here. We enjoy digging up these cars. It's actually been a while. It's been almost a year. I cannot believe it, but it's been almost a year since we got this Kellison and this Dragster. We got those in one trip, and that was quite an eventful trip last summer. We're happy to have bought these things, but we should have waited for a cooler day, that's for sure. Looking back through the comments here. So I think that's pretty much it. I think I'm going to sign off here. I'm going to try like crazy to get a video out for next week. But if life gets in the way, I know that you guys will be patient with me, and you know, you'll hang in there. But I do appreciate everybody watching, and I'm going to walk through one more time, wait for a couple more questions, and I'll sign off here in just a couple of minutes. Aiden, the Back to the 50s show, I have been to that one time. I went there in 2013. The great race started at the Back to the 50s show, and that was amazing. I love that. The fairgrounds there are so cool. I would absolutely love to bring one of our cars up there. It's quite a long trip for us, but that would be really neat. I love that event. I'd love to go back to it someday. All right, I think that's it, guys. I've been on here for almost an hour. Appreciate you guys watching. I hope you have a good 4th of July. Enjoy the weekend. I know I'm going to enjoy having a day off of work on Monday. And I guess one of the benefits of Carly having COVID is I get to work from home for a few days, and that's going to save me about $6,000 worth of gas, so that'll be nice. Oh, I got a question. Is there a wheel that you're still trying to find? Yeah. Of course, we're always trying to find any magnesium wheel, but Halbrand wheels especially, we like front runners, just about any front runner. It doesn't have to be magnesium, but like the American Le Mans is a cool one. We've never owned a pair of those, so it'd be cool to find some. But like I say, we just love any kind of old wheels. So all right, I'm signing off. That's it. We'll see you next week, hopefully. I appreciate all you guys watching, and hope you guys have a good weekend.